We are recording.
Good to go. All right, thank you. This open meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, and the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. And as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. I hereby call to order the November 23rd meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee at 7 p.m. I'm Narissa Wallen, Chair of the Triton Regional School Committee, and I would like to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Erin?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Paul Goldner?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Maureen Heffernan?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Caitlin Hunter?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Paul Lees?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Linda Litkowski?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Paul Mayette?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. And Tina, I know she said she probably wasn't going to. I don't see her on the list. So I'm going to assume she's not coming in, and I didn't see Kaylee come in either.
I did see Kaylee.
Oh, Kaylee's here, yes. We're going to have to find her and unmute her though. And I saw her on the list and then I lost it. I'm coming, Kaylee. Should have just asked her to unmute.
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thanks, Kaylee. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Triton Superintendent Brian Forget.
Here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Assistant Superintendent Kim Croto.
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. School Business Official Kyle Warren.
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. And Special Education Director David McGee.
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. For this meeting, the Triton School Committee is convening remotely via Zoom using the information posted on the district's website identifying how the public may join. If you are personally attending by video conference using your device's camera, please be aware that others may be able to see you. Committee members and administrators, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the district's website with the agenda posting unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that anything that you broadcast will be captured by the recording. All right. So looks like we still have some people coming in, but I'm going to talk through Chairman's comments while they're on their way in. I won't, have a big lead up tonight, but this is a follow-up meeting to last Wednesday's meeting to carry on some of those conversations. We're going to get into the dashboard in a minute, but I wanted to send a huge thank you out to Paul Mayette, who immediately following the last Wednesday's meeting where the idea of a dashboard was brought up, sent me an email and said, I am happy to help with anything that you need in putting together a dashboard. And when he said it's kind of his thing, I would say it's really his thing. So it's been kind of a cooperative effort in putting together a dashboard over the last, 5 days. And I think it's a tremendous amount of work, or 4 days really, tremendous amount of work that's been put in through that time. School committee members should have received that dashboard this morning. Unfortunately, it's not published to the website yet, in part because we're going to talk through it tonight. And also in part because all of the data is not in there yet. So it's not complete. It's part of it's just a mock-up. So we'll talk through that in a minute, but I wanted to put a big thank you out there to Paul. I also wanted to address tonight, I guess, the topic of respect. We are school committee members, we're administrators, we are parents. I would hope that we would all serve as the best examples for the students that we work with. I know as a school committee, we have made a definite effort to be able to do that and to show the process of working cooperatively through the issues that we've encountered and being respectful of each other. Unfortunately, at the meeting last week, we had some people who were not very respectful. We have extra people watching video screens tonight. I would hope that all of the people who attend this meeting would live up to the expectations we should have of our students for being respectful to others. Kim and Kyle are on video watch tonight, and if we see anyone being disrespectful, yeah, Kim's got her finger out, so she she is the fearsome teacher finger. If there is anyone that is being disrespectful rather, your video screens or video feeds will be shut off, and that's unfortunate. I'm sorry that we got to this place. That's, I guess, all I have to say about that is that I hope that that does not happen again, because it's extremely disappointing that that happened last meeting. I actually didn't see it, but I had a number of text messages and Facebook messages from attendees that did see it. And I would say all of them condemned it, which I appreciate, because I think it is horrible to have that kind of disrespectful behavior. So that said, we're going to move on to oral communications from the public. The next item on the agenda is public comment. Members of the public, the meeting host muted you as you entered the meeting. If you would like to address the committee, please indicate now that you would like to do so, either by raising your hand on your video call or using the raise hand option on the participant screen. The meeting host will unmute you so that you can address the committee. Please refer to the public comment policy language on the agenda when making your comments, and remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. When you have finished speaking, the meeting host will mute you again. I'm going to briefly read aloud the oral communication section from the agenda. Members of the public may address the committee for up to 3 minutes, longer with permission of the chairperson. The committee will not engage in a discussion on topics raised during public comment, but may choose to add the topic to a future agenda. This agenda segment will be limited to 15 minutes unless extended at the discretion of the chairperson. Tonight, as in previous nights, I am going to extend it to a 30-minute session if we have speakers that would take it through that length of time. I do also want to ask that when people are speaking, that they make sure that they identify themselves so that we know who you are. So, that said, a few more people still waiting to come in. And the first person on the speaker list that I see is Jackie Lees. Sorry, and before you start, Jackie, I'm just going to note really quick, we use a kind of hand signal system. So it's a 3-minute window for each speaker. When you have 1 minute left in your session, I'll give you the 1 minute sign. When you have 30 seconds left, I'll give you the, I don't know what that is. I think it's a baseball sign of some sort. I don't know. And then at the 3-minute mark, I will unfortunately have to cut you off if you have not completed your comments. So all that said, let me pull up my stopwatch app real quick. And you're all set to go, Jackie.
My name is Jackie Lees. The cases within our district have tripled since Triton started hybrid learning. According to Triton Stay Connected website, on October 22nd, there are 15 cases among our 3 district towns. As of the 19th of November, there are 62. In addition, in the last week or so, there have been 6 cases within our schools. According to DESE, there are at least 1,532 students and staff who have COVID since October 22nd. Salisbury has a 4.9% positivity rate and is currently in the red zone. Newbury is yellow, according to the Governor Baker's dashboard. 98% of COVID patients who have underlying health conditions die, according to page 48 of Baker's dashboard. And according to the raw data from Baker's dashboard, COVID cases among children ages 0 to 19 have doubled in the last 16 days. On November 2nd, there were 2,701 children, and on November 18th, there's over 5,100 cases that were reported. Cases across all ages have doubled in that time period. On November 20th, the CDC acknowledged there's likely more transmission from asymptomatic spread than previously thought, and it removed its guidance for opening schools and stated that full in-person learning was now high risk. Harvard Health published an article in October and stated there's new information that suggests kids spread COVID more than previously thought. They measured the viral load in kids compared to adults and found that the load was the same. And this finding leads to the concern that kids spread COVID even without symptoms. In light of the skyrocketing cases in our state, in our 3 towns, and in our schools, the district should move to a fully remote learning model to protect our families now. If you choose not to, then you should go back to the table with the teachers and negotiate an effective streaming solution so that families who don't agree with you have a safe way of making a substantive choice. I also want to comment on the vote last week to waive the metrics. First, I don't understand how the committee had the authority to vote to abandon the metrics. Waiver wasn't on the agenda and it was not published for the public. The public came to the meeting expecting a discussion and a vote on a draft of the metrics that were posted. And nowhere was there a discussion or indication that waiver would be addressed. The vote wasn't proper. But even if you think it was, it confounds me that the district has thrown away the metrics. Waiving the metrics is frustrating and unsettling. We're living in such uncertain times. District families crave certainty. We sent our sons and daughters to school based upon the metrics, an assurance of sorts that if we cross those lines, the committee would protect our families and transition to a fully remote learning. Instead, now we have no standards. Standards engender consistency so that district families know what to expect and can rely upon the district to do what it said, rather than changing the rules every week. After last week's meeting, where with all due respect, the conversation went in complete circles, no direction and nothing accomplished, makes the committee's decision to waive the metrics even more concerning. And if the will of the committee is to follow that path, then please give families a choice to stream so that those who don't agree with you can protect their own family's health without giving up education. Thank you.
Wow, nicely done. That was 3 minutes and 2 seconds. Well timed. Thank you, Jackie. Wendy is next. Wendy, I'm going to ask you to unmute. Excuse me.
Hi.
There you go. Should be all set.
Hi, my name's Wendy. I'm the mother of a 6th grader at Salisbury Elementary School. I'm just referring back to the CDC. They're still recommending kids be in school. They didn't recommend school closures in the spring, and they're still not recommending them now. Dr. Redfield has said numerous times, he's the director of the CDC, that the safest place for kids are in the classroom. We all want our kids in school. I think the parents are taking it seriously. I'm not doing any extra activities with my kid to put her at a greater risk. I'm very vigilant about taking her temperature before school. The school's been great from what I hear from her, following all protocols. To my knowledge, I certainly haven't been informed of any cases at Salisbury Elementary School. I'd hate to see kids that have gotten into this routine and feel like they're doing well get pulled out of it because we're making decisions based out of emotions and fear. And I'm not saying the virus isn't serious and we shouldn't be afraid of it. Of course we should. But I think it just goes back to we need to take precautions. And I do believe, at least at Salisbury Elementary, that is happening. I get the feeling that a lot of the classes are being streamed at SES. There is, I'm sure, some asynchronous learning. So I don't understand what the big change would be if it was just all live streamed. I know my daughter missed a couple days of school and she was able to easily log on from home and not fall behind. She's one of the high-risk students that are in the classroom all week. So that's it. If my daughter wasn't deemed high risk and in the classroom, I know I would want my child there. I feel bad for the parents that need their kids in school and they weren't selected to be there. Like I said, I just hope decisions aren't being made out of emotion and we follow the CDC guidelines and the science. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next on the list, we have
Hate that shit.
Hang on a second. Martha, it should just ask you to unmute.
Yeah, it did.
Perfect.
I sent you guys an email. It was, I think, pretty comprehensive in terms of how I feel. I really, at the end of the day, I do not believe that we should do a preemptive strike and take 2 weeks off. The governor pretty much recently said that. He made a statement of that school districts should not be taking some preemptive actions, to shut down. But I guess what I really am asking you to do is to please have faith and trust in those of us that are parents whose kids are in the district right now in hybrid mode. Honestly, I have some friends in the district who feel very strongly, and it's up to them to communicate this, that there's not a lot of trust for us in the decisions that we make. And I have a hard time with that because I really want to believe that you do trust us. So I know I'm doing my part as best I can. I know others that are doing the same. I really feel that if there is an issue in a school, if a school has 3, 4, 5 cases, then shut down that school for 2 weeks. That's fine. You know, if you want to shut down SES, or if Triton High School has 3, 4, 5, 6 cases in a 1 week time, and to stop that spread for 2 weeks, I fully support that move. But potentially a preemptive strike just to shut down an entire district, you know, because there may be concerns due to the holiday coming up, I just feel is wrong. I definitely don't agree with it. My hope is that, you know, you guys have done a lot of research with some dashboards, and there's more research, you know, and tonight other parents will share their opinions instead of, I'll be honest, instead of complaining about it on Facebook, you know, and all of that. I wish that people would speak up. I do hope that other parents sent you emails. I wish that other people would raise their hand. I was late getting into this meeting and sad to see I was only the third person with my hand raised. So there's a lot of people on this meeting. There are 9 pages. There is no reason some of these other parents are not speaking and letting you know exactly where they stand. I firmly believe and really want the choice to continue to send my son to school. The difference in his academics from the first month of school to the second is a huge difference with the in-person and the ability to see those teachers. So I'm asking you to really think long and hard before you make that decision tonight. Again, I appreciate everything you guys are doing. It is not easy. I thank you very much and do hope all of you have a enjoyable Thanksgiving. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, Bob is the next one. Should be asking you to unmute.
Hear me?
Yep.
Great. Thank you to the school committee and Superintendent Forget for calling on me and allowing me the opportunity to speak. And also, I presume you may have taken some time to read probably what seemed like an op-ed last night that I sent over with my name's Robert Barrows. I'm a Raleigh resident. I don't know who's got a dog. It's not my dog barking. I'm a Raleigh resident and parent of 2 children in the Pine Grove School in the 1st and 3rd grade. I don't want to take away other parents' time, but it looks like there's a few people on there right now. So it looks like we have time. But I would like to quickly plant a couple of questions into your minds as you begin to deliberate, you know, coming minutes. And hopefully some of this will resonate a little bit more on what I'd spoken about, you know, last night. Is your top goal to achieve optimal learning for our children? Is that what your responsibility is? Or is your responsibility solely to protect the health and wellness of everybody? I know it's a combination. I know it's not an easy answer, but I just want to put that in. What are we trying to achieve from the aspect of the school committee and the school system? The community as a whole is responsible for a lot. It's not all on your shoulders to do all this. If yes, if that is, then should we be exploring? I mean, I'm sorry, do you believe that optimal learning can be achieved without any in-person learning? Can we get all the optimal learning that we need with all the advancements in technology, you know, without any in-person learning? Forget about COVID. Can we just go to virtual remote going forward? Like if what we're trying to do is deliver, you know, optimal learning, then possibly that's the future ahead. If that's the case, then why aren't we just exploring the possibility of going full remote permanently right now? We know the next 9 months are going to have challenges, right? If that's what you're thinking is feasible. If not, though, then do you believe the current in-person hybrid model plan that we have that was approved and is being managed by the superintendent does achieve optimal learning in a balance that we have? And do you believe the plan in place alongside that to prevent the health issues and risks that the superintendent and team has put in place is sufficient to protect our children? Because if it isn't, then we should have been talking months ago that we shouldn't have gone back even 2 weeks ago saying the plan isn't going to deliver what we need, that the 6 feet, the masks, all the things put in place aren't good enough. So it's not about tonight and this decision over the next 2 weeks. These are things that should have been discussed before, if that's how you feel. If you do not believe the current plan I'm sorry, that's it. As you deliberate, all I can say is there's no smoking gun. COVID-19 is here to stay. It's not going away. Even if the vaccines come out, 70% of the population gets vaccinated to deliver blanket immunity, leaving alone the people who chose not to get vaccinated, there's still going to be the percentage that the vaccine doesn't work. And those people think that they're safe and they won't be. That could be my son, goes to school in September, he gets vaccinated, but he's not because the vaccine doesn't work on him. That may be my daughter's teacher, the same situation. The exact scenario that you are so scared about today and the decisions you're making about today are going to exist in September. It might not be for the entire population.
I'm gonna have to cut you off there, okay? Because you've hit your 3-minute mark. Thank
Sorry
you.
about that, but,
Mary is next. Mary, I'm gonna ask you to unmute.
Unmute.
There we go.
All right, let's see if I can start the video too. Okay, great. Hi, hope you guys can hear me and see me. So my name is Mary Anastasio. I'm the mom of a junior at the high school. And really, I'm speaking on behalf of my son and his feeling that hybrid is the best for him. We all have vested interest in this. And of course, I do feel for the committee because I'm sure when you guys got elected, you didn't quite expect this. I also feel for Brian Vogt, and more importantly, to echo the person who went before me, what are our choices? So we do have choices. We have choices to send our school children in hybrid mode. We also have the choice to send them remote. And if those choices aren't what I want as a parent, then there are different learning styles and different learning options that I could possibly look into, homeschooling and different things. And these challenges are not going away in 2 weeks. These challenges are going to stay with us going forward. I also liked last year, Brian, when you said, okay, I'm not going to call snow days until the morning. You reacted based on definitive information, not a preemptive strike. And I think that's what I want to convey to the committee, that out of fear and out of the ability and the wanting to do the best thing for all the kids may not be the best thing for all the kids. I think the wait and see, continuing to stay in hybrid, is part of the process. Parents have planned for this now. They have school, they have work, they have a balance at the moment with this hybrid process. It's defined and it's something that we can continue on with until such a time as we can't. But to preemptively strike, it's just, in my opinion, just too soon. We've done a lot of stuff within the schools with regards to air quality, masks, social distancing, scanning, contact tracing. All of these steps we have worked so hard as a community to put in place. So that's what I wanted to say, and I hope that makes sense. I think some of you might already have a preconceived idea of how you want to go, and that's unfortunate because I really think that the committee does really listen. So for those who do listen, I do hope that we stay in hybrid. So thank you.
Thank you. Next one is Megan. Should ask you to unmute. You should be all set, Megan. It looks like
Okay,
you're.
thank
there
you.
go.
Sorry, I was thinking on my video. So thank you all. I've really appreciated the past several weeks being a little more involved in this process. And I know that this work is difficult. The data is shifting. We need better communication systems, and you're kind of learning on the fly. So I appreciate all the work that we're doing here. I also understand that watching the numbers climb is distressing. Having these cases in the district is distressing. It's concerning, like not being able to guarantee how people are spending their time when they're not in school is worrisome. All those things are true. They weigh on me all the time. But I also hope that those are not the concerns that we talk about tonight or that I hear about tonight when you deliberate. All I think we're asking for, or I am asking for the committee, is to abide by the guidelines that keep effective, safe options open for our children. If there comes a time when numbers and science tell us that we need to be home, I will do it, just like I did it last spring. I will stay home. I've already limited, my interactions outside of the home. But I don't think that's where we are now. Just looking at all the DESE guidelines, the CDC, we're supposed to be prioritizing in-person learning unless there's in-school transmission, and fully remote models are described as like a last resort. And I'm not sure we're at the last resort. I don't feel like we are now. So what would feel like most meaningful, and I hope this is discussed tonight, is to hear conversations to like, what are the procedures for communicating to the community, sharing information about the dashboard, isolated or short-term quarantine procedures that are necessary that don't affect the whole district without cause. So if the numbers are telling me, they're telling us that it's not safe for our kids to be in school, then they shouldn't be in school. But I haven't seen the numbers say that. They say the opposite. And so I hope we can, again, like people have said earlier tonight, it shouldn't be about feelings. Everybody has a lot of feelings, and you can find statistics that are scary, like wherever you go. But I hope that we don't lose sight of like the benefit of having the kids in school, particularly my young son. I'm running up on time, but it's been a big improvement since we started hybrid. So I hope we consider that the priority. Thanks, Narissa.
Thank you. All right, Christine is next. I'm sorry, my participants list is bopping around. There we go. I think it should.
Yep, how are you?
There you go, thank you.
All right, so good evening, everybody. And again, thank you for taking our time or your time to listen to all of us parents and hear what we have to say. And this whole situation is just awful, and we all want 2020 to go up in flames. But the thing that keeps getting to me all the time is that when I think of what's best for the kids, what's best for my kids, I do have a sophomore and an 8th grader. Safest place for them, hands down, is school. I find it so alarming that our abuse, reporting rates are down. There's a lot of other issues that are caused by kids being home, and having this chance for them to be hybrid has been really very positive for almost all of the ones that I know. And I do believe that if the transmission is not occurring in the school, then school is still the best place for them and the safest place for them. And the safest place for them to be for our community. Because if they're not in school, they're going to be at people's houses. They're going to be out and about. There's different things and more of a chance of spreading outside of the school that way when they're not masked and they're not 6 feet apart. So I really believe in the wait and see. I really think that the transmission in school is the data that we need to be looking at. And the CDC says we should be in school. DESE says we should be in school. The governor says we should be in school. And, Brian last week, he thinks we should be in school. And I think for us not to listen to everybody saying that we should be in school is a mistake. I know a big concern was, are the teachers going to be able to continue? Are they going to quit? Are they going to strike? But let's see what happens. Let's get to the point where if we don't have enough teachers, we deal with it then. Let's not preemptively shut these kids down out of their education. That's it.
Thank you. All right, Eileen is next. Eileen, it should be asking you to unmute.
Yes. Good
There you
evening.
go.
Hi, good evening. My name's Eileen Saris. I have 3 children, 2 of which are in the middle school, 8th grade, and 1 in high school. I just want to put out there that I am a healthcare professional. I'm a nurse practitioner, and my husband is an emergency medicine physician. And we follow the science, right? That's how we've always practiced medicine, based on guidelines and recommendations. We strongly believe the CDC recommendations, especially for school. I mean, they're giving you the data, the safety and the benefit of having children in school, and the transmission rates, how low. I mean, ironically, the day after you had your last meeting, they came out and made a very clear stance in regards to keeping the children in school. I think our school has done a great job with putting all the safety measures in place, getting the ventilation in place, having the kids clean, wear masks and everything, because as you know, in addition to mask, it's also the social distancing, which is also key, which has been done. And you guys have done a great job in the school. So again, if we can't listen to the people who are the specialists in this, and I can speak as a nurse who has had to deal with many other medical things in this world in regards to when I was a new graduate, when HIV came out, and we had no idea what it was. Who told us what we had to do was the CDC. When it was Ebola, the CDC. So these are guidelines that these people make. And when Dr. Redfield, the director, comes out again, we have to seriously look at that. I respect and understand parents' concerns, but again, look at the science, because that is how we as medical professionals practice and take care of patients out there and children. And again, if I am someone who is in the field, and then my husband actively works in emergency medicine and he feels comfortable and he's had to take care of many of these patients, then I think we have to strongly, again, go by the science. If you feel that you don't want to, you have the decision. You do not have to do hybrid. Thank you.
Thank you. Alexandra is next. Alexandra, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Hi, actually it's Lori Floodman.
Oh, sorry.
So I'm just using her computer. I just wanted to comment that I understand that we will never come to agreement on if people feel comfortable with their kids going into school or not. And I also understand that people feel that there have been plenty of options put out for families, with some remote option and some in-school option. But I also want to remind people that the Florida Learning School model does not work for all kids. They've said repeatedly that that is for students that can learn independently, so that leaves out a chunk of kids that really that's not their method of learning. And if we don't feel comfortable with them going into school, we're kind of left without an option. So the people that are saying that just choose one of the options, there are families that are truly left without an option. And there are many of us that have people within our homes that are high risk, so that puts us at an even worse position, because we then do not have any option truly. I want people to remember that for some of the classes, they talked at the last meeting that a lot of the AP classes were, and some of the extra classes had synchronous learning opportunities. But for classes my daughter's in, on the days that she's home, she already struggles in an environment where she doesn't have direct teacher instruction. She sits all day long learning by herself. And so we're doing our best as parents to try to support that learning experience, but she is truly learning all by herself. And to make matters worse, 2 of the 4 teachers in her classes last week weren't there. So there wasn't even check-in, it was just homework. So again, it's back to what we had in March, which we were promised wouldn't happen. We are given a reading and then questions that you answer by yourself. And this is happening day after day after day. And she's coming home from school on the days when she's supposed to be in school at noon, saying she has no more classes. And she's at home on her home days finishing at noon. So I'm not really sure what's happening there. We were also one of the families that one of the kids that was diagnosed with COVID this last week was in my daughter's math class. And fortunately, my daughter wasn't sitting in close proximity to him. Otherwise, we would be one of the people that's now quarantining for the next 14 days. I appreciate the people that need to be in school. I totally understand that. But I also understand that it would really be nice for everyone to have the same choice and for there to be equitable education, because right now there's not. Thank you.
Thank you. Susanna is next. Hang on 2 seconds. My thing scrolled again. There we go. All right. Should ask you to unmute, Susanna, and it looks like it depends on how long you take, but it looks like we should have time for one more after that.
Hello. Okay, I'm on mute. Good evening, everyone. My name is Susanna Copeland. I have 3 children in the Pine Grove School District, 2 4th graders and 1 6th grader. I'm addressing the committee tonight firstly to basically honor our PGS leadership and their nurse. They've done absolutely everything to support our children as much as possible. But I would like to share my experience with you all. Since coming back to school, which I totally support, especially as I have a special needs child trying to deal with remote learning in a spring model with ADHD, dyslexia and speech is incredibly difficult. So therefore having online streaming and the way that our teachers are working with it, or we've lucked out, should I say, in 4th grade and 6th grade has been remarkable. But what I want to share with you is my experience. Within the 3 weeks, we had our teacher removed and had a new teacher. Again, reminding you, with a child with ADHD, to do that is a significant change for them to be able to do that. We have also been on bus 11, had exposure to a COVID patient. COVID. I work in the healthcare world as well, so we say patients, and then we've also just recently been quarantined. I won't state which particular grade, because a child or a teacher or a staff member or community member has again been. Now, the reason I point this out is not because of this is going to happen. I work in the healthcare world as well. I'm actually work more around data. And what we're looking at is a lot of retrospective results. We're not looking at forward results, what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. And I can tell you from working in New Hampshire, Vermont, and Massachusetts across the board, we are predicting surges. And having what we've already seen, my children are basically at the luck of the draw right now. There is no standardization, it's just out of luck. Without standardization, we cannot measure success, we cannot evaluate. And so I'm asking, not that we shut down school completely and all the time, but to think about what's coming. What is coming? It is coming, because we've seen that happen in last year. And it's different. The way the spread is this year is this particular point in time is different. And so I'm asking you to consider not a long-term shutdown. None of us want that, but I'm asking you to consider when you've got 3 kids that are what feels like constantly at risk compared to other children. What are we going to do? You know, what are you going to do about short-term versus long-term? And this is really looking at short-term goals, this isn't a forever. This is not a forever. So I'm asking you to consider what is in the best interest in the short term for the health and safety of our children, and to be able to deliver the quality education that is certainly for Pine Grove, certainly in the element for our particular area. And maybe it does have to consider that you have to look at it by case, by school by school.
Susanna, I'm going to have to cut you off there. Okay, you've hit your 3-minute mark. I'm sorry. Thank you. And it looks like we have time for one more. So the last one's going to go to Erica. Erica, it should be asking you to unmute. And you should be set to go, looks like. Erica?
Hear me?
Yes, there we go.
Sorry, headphone issue. Going to reiterate something I put in an email to the committee earlier today. I would like to propose that you all make a metric dashboard, whatever, put the rules in writing and stick to it. Your constant reevaluation, I'm going to change, let's move a vote up, let's move a vote back, let's deliberate it, let's table it. Either put a metric that people can count on so that we can all kind of keep track, see the numbers, be transparent. The 2 cases at the high school that reported yesterday, 1 at Pine Grove last week. How many families know of all the cases right now? None of us do. Or completely decide that you're going to go by the will of the state and keep us all in hybrid until Charlie Baker makes a different decision. Because right now, the constant up and down, never knowing if the metric that they said last week is going to be the same this week, is nutty making. Please be brave, stand up, and make a decision that will stick. Thank you.
Thank you. And that looks like it puts us right at time. So thank you to everyone who spoke during the public comment period. I think one of the things that's most obvious to me is that there are very, very different opinions in play here on opposite sides of the coin there. So we're going to talk about the dashboard next. So I'll welcome, actually, I'm going to unmute Paul Mayette so that he can join in here where he can. So Paul and I and Brian worked on this kind of jointly. So hopefully you've had a chance to take a look through or are able to kind of walk through it right now. The kind of process that we took here was to take all of the everything that was in the previous metrics, as well as take everything that was mentioned last week and try to kind of fold those in. There were certain things that that made sense to put into a chart or a table, and there were other things that it was really hard to be able to figure out how we would look at numbers on a weekly basis. So I guess one of the obvious ones that we've sort of always struggled with is local turnaround times on testing. So one of the options that we looked at taking with that, which was inspired by USC's dashboard. We looked at a number of different dashboard, and that was specifically from USC's dashboard, was to go with some sort of a leveling system. So we opted to look at a traffic light, which you'll see down the bottom with white, green, yellow, and red. That would indicate kind of where there were issues. So I'll take you through this really quick and try and address some of these questions. And the superintendent, even though as we've gone through this today, has even come up with some additional thoughts on this. So the first chart or the first graph is new cases in the last 14 days. So this is a plot of the 3 Triton towns. And it actually goes back to June and shows you where those numbers are at. And I should say, Paul researched and opted to do this in Google Data Studio. And one of the cool things about it is that it's very interactive. So you can actually mouse over the different lines in the graph, and it will actually show you the values for each of those lines. So the other one that you'll be very familiar with is the new cases. So that data was already in the existing report that we publish out on a weekly basis. That's replicated here with the number of staff and students on a given week. We talked about kind of looking more globally at what's happening in Massachusetts. So the next one down on the left-hand side is Massachusetts daily new cases. And that goes back basically to the beginning of the school year, to when we first had individuals really in the building for the preparation of the school year at the beginning of September.
Marissa, can I interrupt for a second? I don't have your email with a copy of the doc of the. No, I never got it.
I will. I'll forward it to you right now.
Sorry.
No problem. I may have accidentally left you off. I can't tell you the number of emails that I sent today. See if I can even find the one I sent. Actually, I'm just gonna, here, I'll just share it with you. You can't add people who already have access. All right, let me see if I can just send you the link then.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, should be in your email shortly.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. The next one is percentage of cases and contacts that are reached by tracers statewide. It's a little bit more difficult to access this type of information locally. So this is kind of a statewide picture at looking at the number of cases that contact tracers have been able to reach and the percentage of close contacts that contact tracers have been able to reach. The next report is something that we're kind of fleshing out right now. So this data, I will say, is the one that I said in my email is definitely not all real data. And this is close contacts in the Triton community. So this is broken out currently by week, and it looks at new close contacts from community cases and new close contacts from school cases. And the superintendent has already suggested breaking this up into staff and students, I believe. Was that the request? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's cool to be able to see a week over week. You can see the delta between the prior week, so it's a cumulative total. But I think it'd be helpful just to be able to see the staff versus student close contacts.
Yeah.
And I will say this too, this is primarily reported to us. So this could be someone who was out waiting for a test to come back. This could be someone who is truly designated as a close contact and is out for 14 days. So it's kind of one bucket, because other than the new school close contacts from cases, you know, for this week, the 3 cases that were newly diagnosed over the weekend, and newly that new information, we know those contacts because we identified them. So we're very clear and solid in that data. The other column is reported to us. So it's a little bit more of a nebulous data set.
Sure. Paulise. Oh, hang on a second. Let me unmute you. Forgot that you can't unmute on your own. Yep, there you go.
So Marissa, I know you said that this is incomplete and it's a work in progress, but we've got 266 people. Is there any way we can screen share this?
No, we've unfortunately shut down screen sharing. We talked about this in the past because it is a risk on Zoom. So we've opted not to do that. Unfortunately, it's locked off in the meeting. So, but I mean, the intent is here to take any constructive criticism and try and fold that in here and then get this published out very quickly and be able to update it. It's a quick update process on the back end. So we will be able to update that with real data as it's coming in. So the next one is classes in schools that are currently remote. This one's a little bit more difficult. So we had to think about how to do this. The way we opted to was to look at the number of classes, and this doesn't, it doesn't have to be for a full week. So you can see, for instance, that we have 3 classes that are fully remote right now. This past week, we have 3 classes this week that are fully remote. And then we'll have 3 classes that next week are fully remote. Those will come off of remote at that point. And they'll come back into the school, and they would come off of that report on that week, the first full week that they're completely back in the school. We have 0 schools that are remote right now, so you can see 0 in that column. It would be a similar thing. So if it was, you know, a Wednesday to 14 days, so Wednesday 2 weeks later, you would actually see that that one school, for instance, being in remote for a 3-week period, since that's the way it spans. At the bottom is the other factors. This was borrowed in large part by USC, from USC, and from the old metric, and it can be adopted however we want it to. USC actually takes a look at the federal response to the pandemic, which can include things like mandates, the availability of widespread testing in the area, including, you know, asymptomatic and kind of population sample testing. Funding, that type of thing would go in here. State response to the pandemic would be similar, but on the state level. Staffing shortfalls is something that the superintendent will gauge for us on a weekly basis. So that will look at things like whether we have enough staff to run classes, whether there are dangers with additional leaves of absences that might be kind of on the horizon that the administration already knows about, whether there are issues with substitutes, which we know is kind of an ongoing thing that we're using a lot of substitute teachers, and obviously we need those to be able to cover classes. Testing turnaround time is the next thing. Again, very difficult to look at Anna Jakes and Convenient MD and the local Stop the Spread sites that we have some families using. So we had opted to just make this a light. Right now, most of the testing times are running right around 3 days. Right now, it's not, you know, no concerns at all, but it's something that we're keeping an eye on. Local contact tracing capacity goes to the ability of the contact tracers to be able to handle more cases and more contact tracing. And then one of the questions that was raised at last week's meeting was whether we could essentially check in and see if there was difficulty in identifying transmission sources. There's overall in the state of Massachusetts, they're not able to identify transmission sources for all of the cases that are out there. So that was one of the questions. So we put that in as a green light too, since that's not necessarily a really easy thing to quantify. It's more about how our individual contact tracers locally feel about their ability to do that. There's text included underneath that notes the requirement for 6-foot social distancing that the school committee has currently put in place in line with CDC and Mass DPH guidelines, and that if we're looking at a move to fully in person, that obviously we cannot do that right now with and have all students in the building at 6 feet. So that would require a change and a feasibility study to be conducted again to determine whether students could safely return to the classroom. And then the last piece is something that's been asked for. So I've heard both from parents and from staff the concerns about, when we look at fully in person, hybrid, and remote, that doesn't specifically address the high-risk students and teachers being in the buildings, and what would cause a shift for them as well, so that the buildings would essentially be empty other than essential personnel that might have to come in and check safety systems and security of the buildings and things like that. This is just pulled straight from the proposed metric that we looked at last week. It's never been approved. I just didn't have anything to put in here and needed something to put in. So at this point, that's in there as a placeholder and open for discussion. I did feel that some of this needed more explanation, the type of explanation that I'm giving you right now, rather than just the brief titles that are available in the document itself. So if you'll notice up at the top, there is a link to take you to an explanatory document. It currently exists as a Google Doc because I needed to be able to kind of quickly edit it on the fly as we were putting this together over the weekend. In the long run, this would probably be a PDF file that it would go to. And then questions, of course, going to the school committee at the school committee address, so that if there are any concerns, questions on the data, things like that, that aren't addressed by the dashboard itself or the explanatory document, those could be handled through the school committee email address. So that said, I want to say again, many thanks to Paul Mayette, who put in hours this weekend. We were Zooming on Sunday afternoon, trying to iron out kinks and figure out how tables were going to work and things like that. So this would not have been done without him. And I very, very much appreciate that, because it was a cooperative effort. And I should not leave out the superintendent as well, who has pulled some of this data for us. Some of it was already in existence. Some of it is new that we talked about last week. So he was instrumental in pulling together some of that new data that's existing in this dashboard. So that said, I'm going to open it up for feedback, questions. My hope here is to get your feedback on everything that exists on the dashboard as it stands right now, and then be able to make changes as needed, and probably run one more draft of the dashboard by the committee to make sure that it has all of the data that you want to see in the format that you would like to see it. And then at that point, we could begin publishing this out. This can be embedded directly in a website, so it would appear very similar to the way that you're seeing it in Data Studio, which is the way you're seeing it right now. But it would be essentially within the framework of, for instance, one of the Stay Connected pages. So that said, I am going to start taking questions. So Linda, I see first.
I want to thank you guys for putting this together. It's very helpful. One of the questions that I think we've heard over and over is what would trigger us to go to remote? I don't know if that's something that we want to have in a graph. And also, you have it as the Triton Regional School District. Is it possible to break it down by schools of where the close contacts were, instead of by the whole district.
I'm going to punt that second question to the superintendent first, because I don't know how much breakdown he can get on those, on that
Well,
data.
I know that we send out letters to the schools, to the parents who are in close contact. So I don't
Yes.
know if we can just say it was Pine Grove that had a case, or the high school or the middle school, so that at least we're being transparent so that everyone knows where the close contacts were.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that data is there, in the data set. Certainly, as you said, Linda, when we had a case, 2 over Saturday and Sunday from the high school, and then 1 from Pine Grove, right? We messaged those families from the schools. To date, the recommendation from DESE has been to communicate with the school. It was actually, Narissa was sharing with me and said, I think she was speaking with someone from Salisbury Elementary, and they said, well, we don't have any cases yet. And it was kind of one of those aha moments where we're kind of feeling like what we're doing to make sure we're HIPAA compliant. And obviously that is, this is a world we're not usually in, publishing medical data. And so wanting to be HIPAA compliant, but I think it's important to show district-wide numbers. And I don't think it's a bad thing actually to break it down by school. So again, we have to be cautious. We have to be cautious about, whenever we can, we want to say it's a student case or a staff case. If there is an extenuating circumstance where we, by saying that, will automatically identify the individual, then we have to refrain from saying that. But I would say by and large, I think we probably can, in most cases, break it down by school without breaking any HIPAA compliance.
Okay.
Erin, did you have a follow-up on that before I come back to Linda's first question?
Yeah. So if you were gonna give away who and risk the HIPAA compliance and the privacy piece of it, how would you list it? Would you list it as a student case, or would you list it, I mean, because that would need to be tracked on the document somewhere. What would you list it as, just so?
Yeah, it would have to be one or the other. I mean, you're right. I mean, I think it's when we're messaging out to the school.
Gotcha.
Right? It's different. So
Yes, I'm on board now. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think I've said this to so many parents, my gosh, would I just love to be able to say, here's the case. I can prove to you there's no concern or no connection. This is hard. This is hard for everyone dealing with this, because this is, nurses are used to dealing with HIPAA compliance. This is not something we're used to dealing with on a daily basis that we're coming to grips with how we are able to communicate about.
Yeah. So Linda, to come back to your first question, I think that's kind of one of the primary things that I thought we went over last time. So, so my understanding was that the district wanted, or that the committee wanted to move away from a metric that had defined transition points, other than possibly going fully remote, so that even high-risk students and staff wouldn't be in the buildings. If that's not correct, then I think we need to totally rework this. Sorry.
Narissa, I fully understand and agree with going away from the metrics. It's just, I want the people on this public forum to hear why we went away from the metrics. And by you reiterating that is what I want them to hear.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, hang on. I'm evicting my 8-year-old. He can't keep his mouth shut. Sorry, having kids, school committee meetings, working from home, you know how it goes.
I know how it is. So I just want to be as transparent as we can, and that we wanted to move away from metrics. And that's why we're not posting an exact when we're going to close.
Yes, and I actually have a suggestion about kind of how to handle that after having a little more thought than last week. So I want to come back to that at the end, but first I want to get through all the questions that we have on the dashboard and suggestions, and we'll come back to that idea. But thank you.
Okay, I don't have any more questions.
Okay, Thank you. Maureen, I don't know if you can unmute yourself. Let me see. Looks like some people can, some can't.
Okay. Well, first, I just wanted to thank both Paul, Maya, and Narissa for spending their whole weekend putting this together. I think it's pretty comprehensive, and it certainly puts together a lot more information than we were looking at before. So I really appreciate all the work you did. Just wanted to ask, should we include somewhere any bus, like if we have bus cases? We have had one case on the bus. I don't know if it's worthwhile to add that in here somewhere.
That is a good question. If we do break it out by school, Brian.
I think that was why we didn't break it out by school, was because of
Yeah.
the bus situation.
So here's a tough situation. I say staff member, bus 4, right? I've identified who the individual is. So that's one of the difficult places where if I say student, right, could be any number of 25 individuals on the bus. If I say it's a staff member, then obviously it's the driver. So so that does become problematic.
Okay.
So if we stay with student and staff, we'd still be okay. But once we break it out down to the, well,
We could add a column with unidentifiable student, staff, and
that sounds bad though. I just have to
Yeah.
say.
I like the concept. It does sound a little weird.
I don't know. We can think through that and try and come back with something, just with the knowledge that we may end up right back where it is right now with just a student and staff breakdown if we can't resolve that. That's kind of what we've been doing all along, is it's like shift it up and then, oh, it doesn't quite work right, so shift it back or try something new. This definitely hasn't been a smooth and easy process to figure out how to display data.
Is there a way to also, separate from the bus, but a way to look at somewhere in the close contacts, like, you know, no two cases are the same, right? So, you know, one of our earlier cases that was identified in the middle school, there were 0 close contacts with that case. And then we've had other cases that do have close contacts. So, I mean, it's really important data to look at, you know, than just the case number. So I don't know how we would capture that, but I just think that that's, you know, going to be a really important piece of information to not lose sight of. You know, if we had 4 cases and 0 close contacts, that's a good thing. But if we have 4 cases and 100 close contacts, then, you know, obviously that's not good.
Yeah. And I was going to say, to note that the case from, I guess that's the week of the 16th or 19th, that case actually didn't show up. And I think I emailed the committee to note that didn't show up on DESE's data because the individual was not in school for the 7 days prior. So when I report the cases, there's no format, it's a phone call. And when I go to report the cases, they ask, you know, not identifying information, but ask, has this individual been in the schools within the last 7 days? And if the answer is no, then that's the last 7 days through the transmission period. So they were not in the schools when they were contagious, and therefore, from the way that the Department of Ed is counting it, they're looking at school impact. So it can be somewhat confusing when matching it up against straight Maven state data. But I think that's an important point, that is a very different, that's a very different data point. When the system worked, or the system worked in schools, or the system worked because a family made a choice and was worried about something and kept a student home, that's the system working, and there should be some way to note that. Absolutely.
Thanks, that's all I have for right now.
Yeah, and I guess this goes to the point. This is what I'd like to propose, because last time the school committee talked about meeting weekly, and I think that's a lot to put on people. And one of the best thought I had about all this was what I'd like the committee to consider is having a posting for every Friday, if that's the date that we want to look at it, but having a small group that considers the data on Thursday nights and determines whether that meeting's necessary or not, because that would then give us the ability to message to the community if we need to, that meeting is going to happen. And at a meeting like that, we could tease out, assuming that it's something that the superintendent can share, more information about, for instance, particular cases in their close contacts, that type of thing. So, I'll set that aside too, and I would welcome any other ideas. I just think that meeting weekly is a lot, and there's a lot of strain already involved with school committee. I know I've talked to people who are definitely feeling the stress, so I don't want to put on any more than we have to. So I'm gonna come to Linda.
In regards to the bus and the school and the staff cases, why can't we just make it easy that it's just a case at Pine Grove or a case at the high school, whether it's the bus or not?
I think the problem is when it's for instance, if it was a middle school, high school bus case, it would be counted as one in both the middle school and the high school, and that's going to get confusing. Does that make sense?
But I don't see why we would have to list it on the dashboard that it was a staff member or a student. Why couldn't it just be a case at whatever school it is?
Yeah, I think we can have either one or the other, but it's probably going to be a choice at that point. So, Erin?
So I would think that it would be important to know the staff versus student, because we still need to know how many teachers we have available and that sort of thing. If the numbers for the teachers start going up, we're going to have a problem with making sure that the kids have somebody in front of them.
Yes. So I think Brian's rolling that in the traffic light at the bottom. So that's one of the places where I'd anticipate if there's an issue, right, with staffing.
But would it necessarily replace though I'm sorry, I'm opening the bottom. Again, would it necessarily replace, it says staffing shortfalls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That would be a straight, not necessarily when the number hits 5, when the number hits 10, when the number hits 15, that's a straight assessment of many different factors and whether or not we're running into staffing issues, whether that's someone that's been diagnosed or a close contact or making a decision to step away or substitutes, it could be any of those things. So that's a little bit more global. I was looking at another example from another school district, and it's the opposite, right? We said we can do staff or student or school, or this one chooses the school and doesn't say whether it's staff or student. So I do think I think it's one or the other in those situations.
I think it's just a case at whatever, just to be transparent to the community. If it's individual, then a letter will go out to who's ever affected by, if it's a staff member or a student. But at least the community will know where a case is. That was just trying to make it as simple as possible and make it as transparent as we can without any significant information behind it.
So you're thinking more location than you're thinking staff versus student.
Right, because if a specific classroom is affected, those parents will get letters.
They're getting phone calls.
Right.
In most cases.
Right,
Yeah.
but they'll get something.
Yes.
But the rest of the
They'll get
community
notified.
won't need to know the specifics. They'll just know that there's a case at Salisbury Elementary or Newbury, the middle school, the high school.
We would have to take a universal approach, because if we're so I think to your point, Linda, district-wide, it would be really helpful to see the case count for the school.
Yeah.
For the parents and families at the school, staff, everyone at the school, it's
Right.
gonna be really important for them to be able to know whether it's students or staff. And I think if we choose, staff and student level detail at the school and school level detail for the district, then if I'm at, say I'm at Newbury Elementary, that's where a case was, I can look at the data, and I just identified what it was and can hone in pretty quickly on the case. And right, I mean, there are many individuals, I mean, we've already seen it, who are willing to share their information. That's their information to share. We just have to be very cautious about what we put in writing and information we share.
Right.
Yeah.
Caitlin. There you go.
Is it, well, Paul, thank you. Narissa, thank you, because this thing was, I don't know how fun it was to create, but it was really interesting to play around with. So I just want to
there may have been a small amount of cursing. That's all I can say.
I can imagine, because those graphs are awesome. So that has to have some cursing. Can we just, and it doesn't, I know it might not be in a fun graph, but can you link, I was looking at the dates that you have out. So can you just link the emails that Brian's already sending or that the principal is already sending to those situations? So rather than creating a whole new, and I know that's probably a bigger pain than I'm making it out to be, but if you could just link like to the date, what Brian and the principal are already sending, then you don't have to put it in another graph, because they can just click on they can just click on the case and then immediately get pulled to what was already given to the public from people.
So
like if you go,
yeah, I was gonna say those don't get posted anywhere right now,
which would make it the pain, because you'd have to PDF it, I guess. And then I don't know if you can link it or if you can just put it in like a separate part, like communications, COVID communications by school, and then put like dates on them. Not a fun graph, but more of a, I don't know how to describe it, like a link. I'm struggling here.
Yeah, no, I mean, the posting is a piece of cake, right? You print a PDF, you put posting the messages. Not worried about that. I'm just worried about, are we all in essence doing the same thing? And if we're putting all this data in the same location, we're still going to come down to the same location or the same situation where we might have, like the bus is the perfect case, where we can't put it in there if it was part of both a letter and the data set here, because we're going to identify who it was in writing, and we have an issue with that. So even if we're making people hunt a little more detail, it's still
the detail.
And again, I can take that away and do some work and digging on that.
I just don't know if that fixes the transparency issue for like where people are saying, you know, just because oh my goodness, sorry. Just because Pine Grove gets an email, why is someone at SES not getting the email? So if we could, but I understand that could create kind of a big issue in identifying people too.
So what about expanding on that? And I know that this would cause you to have to draft a second document, but something that's pared down a little bit, that's an immediate communication that goes out to the community, the district as a whole, so that everybody does get notified that there was 1, 2, whatever cases at X school, and it either can go out in the email or, like Caitlin just said, it gets posted to the website, but it's a dumbed down document that doesn't have all the other details that you were giving out to the individual school or whatnot. Because I still think this is going to come out on a weekly basis, correct?
Yes, and we've so some of the data may be able to be updated daily. So Paul and I were talking about, can you just the state doesn't nicely have a capture on weekly new cases that you can take that way. So the only way we could really get that data to make it, you know, size up nicely was on a daily basis, to put in that second chart on the left-hand side. So I guess part of the question is, you know, does that get dumped in daily? Does that get dumped in on a weekly basis, so that you get a 7-day update all in a row coming up on that chart at the same time?
So I'm actually thinking more about the new cases at our district. So It's, I think that we really need to notify the entire district that we have a case and not have them wait until a Thursday draft of a document being put out there, because the impact is very different based on perception of what's really going on in the community, if everyone is aware of what's going on at all schools. And obviously,
yeah, I was gonna say, I don't disagree. I think that the issue has been that DESE says the notification should be happening at the school level.
well, it is a school level, because the district, there's 5 schools in our district. There's 3 elementary and there's a middle school and a high school. So they are the schools. The schools get notified.
I think I missed something in your explanation then.
So that everybody gets the notification. They're all schools. It didn't say that, DESE didn't say it has to go to only the individual school, and it was a recommendation, correct?
I mean, there's no formal edict that we can't communicate out to the district. It was just their draft communication setup is what we took and used. So I mean, I personally agree. I think the new cases at Triton, top right box, is something that's actually most helpful if that's updated on a per case basis. So when cases are identified, I send it to Paul or to Narissa, or I just put that in the Google sheet, type the numbers in, and that sheet has a new line every time a case is identified.
I mean, we can pull the weekly reports. So we've been using the weekly reports from DESE because it was an easy way to say, here's the state data, here's the local data, and it should match, because people start getting concerned when it doesn't match, understandably. I mean, we can pull that and just have it on a case-by-case basis to say that, you know, for instance, I know I looked earlier today, and one of the cases in the November 19th week was messaged on the 13th. That there would be, you know, a line specifically for the 13th, and I don't know what the date on the other one was that week, and then there would be a separate line for that one, assuming it wasn't also on the 13th. Does that make sense? Because there's one student and 1 staff in that week, so it could be literally on a case by case. Here's the new case for the day.
Yeah. And I would say that top right box that's showing the new cases at Triton is already going to be, is not going to match perfectly with DESE data, simply for what I mentioned earlier. So I think everything else, I was just looking through quickly, I think the rest of them make sense to report on a weekly basis, whether we're doing that on Thursday after state data or every Friday, whatever it is, set our cutoff point. But I think the cases should be updated real time, because there's not going to be matching up with the state data anyway. Like that middle school case is the perfect example.
Okay. All right. So we can go there. Does that, before we move on to that, does that resolve everybody's concerns around that? Okay. Maureen, I'm going to unmute you.
I was just going to agree with Aaron. I think that, you know, as we move through this, we do need to fix the communication to the district as a whole, because what I saw this last weekend, as the cases came out, there was a lot of confusion and frustration by parents that, you know, we're hearing through the grapevine, there was cases at another school, and there was a lot of misinformation about how many cases there actually were. So, you know, we have to fix that. I don't know, you know, I just want to sort of agree with Aaron and say whatever way we can do that to fix. I think that has to be done in real time. I don't think we can do it on a week, you know, wait till Thursday.
So I'm just going back to this idea, because what we had talked about was putting this in the weekly digest, which means that it's getting disseminated weekly, which while this could be a real-time update, doesn't fix what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's
I was gonna say,
it's the communication that I'm worried about. That
me too.
I saw this weekend, just as the emails started coming out, the misinformation that gets out there, you know, it's on social media, you're seeing people post things about how many cases there are, and I would like to do something to prevent that from even happening. So I don't know what that would look like. If Brian, you send your email out to, let's say there's a case in the high school like we had this weekend, you send your email out to the high school community. And then there's maybe a more general email that would follow to the district to say, high school parents have been notified, there's been a case, on this date for the high school. I don't know, I'm concerned the way the information is being shared through social media, it's wrong. Like some of it's wrong. And I just want to be able to stop that.
I'm not sure that that's going to totally fix it. I just have to say that I heard there were situations where I had parents saying, I know about cases. And I was like, well, if you know about cases, you need to, help the district to know about cases, right? Because, so.
I was just going to say, I mean, if this isn't, when you say you were going to send it out weekly, Narissa, I mean, this is going to be a live data dashboard, right?
It is.
This is linked off of the Stay Connected page is what I assumed.
Yes.
So if we tell people, right, you don't have to wait for a message from the district. If you know that top right box, and maybe that's the most prominent, right? Somehow it's, I don't know, Paul works his magic and that becomes a more prominent first data set. Then everyone is able to go there, whether they hear about it at 1 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the afternoon or 9 o'clock in the morning. They go and they can look at the date and say, yep, heard about a new case. Today's the 22nd. There it is, November 22nd. Here's the cases. And so I think that makes the most sense. And this becomes the one-stop shop where people can go and verify from a district perspective, not wait for any communications.
Can we use social media, not to put out the information, but to say there's a new case in the district and then link it to this page?
Can we? I believe so.
The issue's on social media.
Yeah.
And so if we use it to say, the email has been sent to the appropriate school, there's a new case within Triton Regional District, and then you link it to this awesome dashboard, people will get a very real-time update. They'll get the email at the appropriate school, they'll get a real-time Facebook alert, and then they'll get linked directly to this, so they will have all the information at their fingertips. And then you've kind of hit everything without saying anything at all.
My one concern is that there are a fair number of people who aren't on social media. So you're gonna.
Well, the email still goes out. So the email will go to the right school. So that hits that part. And I mean, I don't know. I just think we could get a large chunk of information without saying anything that way, and then still use the communication that we've been very accustomed to be more.
I'm gonna make the suggestion before we go around too much longer here, that the superintendent takes this and figures out a proposal, plan, something to hopefully address as many concerns as possible within the limits of what we can reveal and who that information can be revealed to.
Yeah.
Does that sound like a plan? And I don't think it even needs to come back here to a business meeting. I think that's literally an email saying, this is what's going to happen.
Perfect. Absolutely.
The committee, if we can do that. Kaylee has a question or comment. Hang on. Should be unmuted, Kaylee. There you are.
On the topic of sending out the emails to the families and everything, we had talked about it in March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, and now we're talking about it in November. Student body is still not getting any of these emails. And we found out about cases that like days later because our parents happened to check the email and we didn't hear about it. Or there's people that are finding out about cases through their teachers before they hear about it from the school, like from the district themselves, or they're finding out from their classmates. And I know that sending them out to a first grader might just be fear mongering, but at the same time, on a high school level, I think that it would be nice if we could be included on those emails, like it's been said that we will since March.
Absolutely.
Patrick Kelly. All right. Ooh. Hang on, Kia's got to follow up.
Yeah, it was mainly the emails that are going out from the district directly.
So the
Not
high
like,
school ones you're getting?
the high school ones we're not getting anything from the district directly.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Other questions or comments on this dashboard? All right. Seeing none, what I'm going to do is Paul and I will go back to the workbench, so to speak, and make updates with all of the feedback that's been provided here. And we'll get updated copy out to the committee as that gets done, and the superintendent will get an update on communications plans out to the committee as well separately. And I think that should satisfy the actual physical dashboard. So my next question is, again, I'm just going to say this is my personal opinion that it's a lot to ask people to meet weekly. My proposal would be to post a meeting for every Friday. Just because we post a meeting doesn't mean we have to actually hold the meeting. So my recommendation would be to have a few people look over the data on a Thursday night. And if there is cause for concern there, then notify the committee and the public, or the committee and the public would be notified after that, I guess, that meeting would be held because there was cause for concern. And then I guess the other flip side of that question is I need a good idea, or I guess I shouldn't say it's necessarily me, but whoever is kind of taking that look on Thursday night, whether it's the superintendent and a couple of school committee members or whoever it happens to be, needs an idea of where the tolerance for risk is, I guess, to know what would trigger a Friday afternoon meeting to actually be held if that proposal is acceptable to the committee. So can I take comments first on how you'd like to do this? Because I mean, we can definitely still hold meetings every Friday. I really feel like it's a lot to ask of the full committee to set that time aside once a week. And I should say there's subcommittee meetings going on during the week, right? We have business meetings going on during the week. So sometimes this could be the third or fourth school committee meeting of the week for some people. It's a lot. Maureen, you.
There you go. Just a quick question about the timing. So last Wednesday, we talked about if we met on a Thursday, it would, and there was a need to shift the district in a learning model, there would be time to make that adjustment for perhaps a Monday. Would that be the case if we were meeting on a Friday? So, I mean, would there be enough time? I mean, I'm assuming that if these meetings took place on a Friday, it would be taking place on a Friday evening. So I'm just wondering if there would be enough time. I guess my question is more for Brian then, if you think that there would be enough time to shift learning models.
Yeah, I would say a Friday, and whether it's a Friday afternoon or evening, I would certainly push for Friday afternoon versus every Friday evening. But if it were even a Friday afternoon, once teachers have gone on their way, called a 4 o'clock meeting or whatever, would have gone on their way for the weekend, it's quite an operation that they have set up in their classrooms. So certainly they would likely be coming in to teach from their classrooms, even if students were shifting to remote. But depending on the data, right, if it gets to that point where we're literally shifting all students and staff to home, if it were to get to that point, Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock is not enough time for that. No.
Okay. All right. And the state data comes out every Thursday. Is there a time on that?
It says 5, but it's been as late as like 6:15. Yeah, it's not ideal. It used to be on Wednesdays, which was great because
Right.
it came out at 6. I had it updated usually half an hour before our meeting ran, and we were good to go. When they moved it to Thursday, it became a whole lot more difficult.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure.
So I guess I would say, so if, and it's noted, it's been noted, if the data is getting to a point for a specific school, someone used the term 3, 4, 5 cases in a school, right? I have the authority and I'm not gonna be hesitant to shift a school into remote in reaction to the data, to the cases in that specific school. So I guess if we're talking about the committees coming back to talk about district-wide decisions, then I think that there needs to be a little bit more runway for people to plan. So if the meeting of that small group, whatever the subcommittee, whatever you were saying, Narissa, is meeting on Friday afternoon with a posted meeting every Monday, and then a shift would happen the following Monday, that gives everyone a full week to plan. Because if we're shifting to remote, whether I would certainly argue that we do this at the most at 2-week increments, but if that shift's going to happen, that gives everyone the opportunity to plan. If the data is that bad in any one school, then I will have made the decision already. And it's you meeting to confirm or overrule me, I guess, at that point, for lack of a better term. So I just think there needs to be time. There needs to be some runway for everyone, the students and families, to plan. And I also, and I think I said this last week, I worry about the potential of a shift every Friday, right? Or Monday, or whatever it is that looms large over everyone that is trying to build momentum. And it was hybrid, or it was remote, now hybrid. And again, when the data says we have to, but at that point, it's going to be disruptive, right? It's a momentum buster. So I think that we just that kind of looming every once a week, whatever the day of the week that it's happening on, I think is really, really hard for everyone, every single individual, whether you're a student, a teacher, a parent, a administrator, that's just a committee member, right? That's just a hard thing to leave hanging out every single week. Maybe it's the only option. I don't know. That's ultimately your call, but I think that's a really challenging paradigm to set up.
Go ahead, Maureen. Oh, sorry. Keep forgetting that you're force muted.
All right, I muted myself. So do you have an alternative suggestion then, Brian? If I understand what you're saying, like that's a really difficult, makes for everybody's week is just difficult leading up to Friday, but I don't know, is there another option?
Well, I think the Monday, right? So I certainly, I would definitely say a Monday meeting. And I think that people would know on Friday if you're going to hold the meeting that we would post, there's going to be a meeting happening on Monday. The legal posting would have already been there. Then we communicate with families and staff that this is going to, be a discussion. I don't know. Is it a commitment to every 2 weeks, or within the interim? I would address the concern at any individual school as the data warrants.
I mean, maybe to start off, we should be meeting every week because, we're all being told that, the numbers are rising. And so maybe in the beginning, as we transition to this dashboard, that we do meet weekly, and then hopefully we can start to taper off. If we see things are, getting better, we could go to 2 weeks. But I think that we should try to meet at least in the beginning, weekly, because, you know, there's a lot of factors here in this decision-making process. And that's why that's the only reason why I felt comfortable moving away from the metric, was because we were creating this dashboard that was going to use all this information. And so I would suggest that we do try in the beginning to meet weekly. So.
Are you talking about Maureen and her mute happy?
Sorry, my house phone started ringing, so it was just distracting.
Are you thinking about meeting as a full committee weekly, Maureen?
Well, no, I mean, I think that your suggestion of creating a small subcommittee to review the data that comes out on Thursdays is good, because we don't need to meet, but, you know, to have, you know, representatives from the school committee looking at that with the administration, I think is important. And I do think that, you know, that group could then say, okay, yes, we need to meet, or no, we don't.
Okay. Linda?
I have a different thought on it, actually. We have this dashboard that's going to be updated every week. And again, Brian and Kim are in the schools every day. I think they should be the ones who are deciding whether we should meet or not. We'll have the dashboard so we can see if the cases are getting higher. And then we can, you know, we elected Narissa as the chairperson of our committee, and she is the leader of our committee. And we have to have confidence in her and Brian and Kim that they're going to do what is in the best interest of our students. So I'm not sure that we have to meet every week. I think we should leave it up to the administration and Narissa, and we will have the transparency with our dashboard. That's all.
So you're thinking, before you mute, so you're thinking about about weekly review, but without a posted meeting. And if one of you had concerns, you could raise it with me just like you normally would, to have a meeting in between.
Exactly.
That's accurate.
We have the dashboard that's going to be transparent to all of us.
Mhm.
And you and Paul will be updating it, and Brian. So you will have your own small group anyways.
Mhm.
And I think, again, we elected you as our chairperson, and I respect that position.
You do remember that my election was everyone else not wanting to be chair, right?
However, you were nominated and you were seconded and you were unanimously elected. So
I appreciate
have
that.
the utmost respect for that position, and I think all of us at the committee should also respect that you are in a unique position to make the decisions for the committee. And in my 12 years on this committee, you have done a fantastic job.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Paul Mayette?
I'm just listening to what Brian was saying, and I think that there's a practical application to what he's saying, in that it's unlikely, probably, that we would be looking to move an entire district if there wasn't already a school closed where he had to make that call. So the idea, I think this was brought up, that we would be meeting every week potentially would be incredibly stressful for the community. I think we've heard the worry in people's voices. Brian, I know that's putting an awful lot on you. But yeah, I think that idea of meeting in a small group weekly to review it, see, keeping our eye on it. I think the dashboard allows us to keep our eye on trends. I think trends are important. But that the idea that, generally, it seems to me that Brian would be shutting down a school or a couple of schools, and then we would be most likely to meet if it looked like there was a shutdown for the district, with, you know, obviously our second topic tonight being another a separate consideration.
Okay, so my hearing, I think what I've heard so far is small group review weekly, no posting, and we would rely on either the small group to raise an alert for a meeting to be posted, or an individual member to approach me, or even Brian could go to and request that a meeting be held. Is that where we're at? Is everyone good with that? Okay. Thumbs up. Anybody? Yes, yes. Seeing lots of nods. Thumbs up.
Can I know, so that if that's even more so, that top right chart with the counts is updated on a case-by-case basis. So that's not waiting for the week, right? I would argue that's the most important chart there, right? It's the in-school cases. And so if anyone sees numbers that are emerging and wants to convene, I'm sure, I don't know their process, Narissa, but they contact you and they require a meeting. Likewise, if I'm closing a school, I'm going to make the call and ask you to meet within 48 hours to have that discussion about the decision that led to that, and, you know, continue moving forward. So I think that makes perfect sense.
All right. One more thing I wanted to come back to before we're done with the dashboard conversation, and that's the triggers at the bottom to pull everyone from buildings. When I was talking about that with the superintendent earlier this afternoon, I think we want to reconsider some of the things that are there. So he said, for instance, if there is ongoing issues with contact tracing cases that we've had in our buildings, that might be a case where we want to pull everybody for 2 weeks, because if that's an ongoing issue, that's something that's going to be a situation where we don't want individuals in our buildings any more than they absolutely have to be. Same thing if he had to shut down multiple schools. So my suggestion is to come back to that at a later date, because we were kind of, you know, brainstorming. To my thinking, I think that's something that needs to be there. You know, we need to be considering everybody and not just the district level, overall level of the learning model, but down to, you know, high priority learners and the staff that are in the buildings. You know, I just don't know that the superintendent's satisfied that the appropriate triggers, or whatever you want to call them, are there in that list. So my suggestion is that we set that aside, I guess, for now. And again, I mean, I can talk about with the superintendent, we can bring it back at another meeting. It's just not something I don't think that we're prepared to take on tonight, since that was a conversation that we just really hopped back into today. Does that make sense?
I just will say, based on what Paul Mayette just said, he literally articulated my thinking to some degree that I shared with you today, which is, rather than an individual case count that makes that shift at the school and the district level, it's a certain number of cases at a school level, and then it would be a certain number of schools at the district level that causes that shift. So I think that was an important point.
I think that the hard thing about that is that that when that happens, we want to make it for a longer term plan. The superintendent has the ability to do short-term shutdowns. If we want to go out for 2 weeks and know that we want to go out 2 weeks, we really need to have some sort of a mechanism in there to ensure that when that point is hit, it's hit necessarily without a meeting, so that, you know, when people are going out, they know they're going out for 2 weeks. You know, so it's a kind of this bigger shift, but an automatic one.
Absolutely.
So I'm not sure when we're going to meet next. We have a business meeting on the calendar, but when we get toward the end of the meeting, we can broach that and see if that's something that we want to come back and talk about sooner than later, or if that's something we feel like we can leave off to a business meeting with the sort of process and protocols that we haven't just, you know, kind of proposed now. Does that make sense? All right. Anything else on the dashboard that anyone wants to raise? All right. Seeing none, let me grab my agenda. And the next item is Thanksgiving break and responding to the anticipated increase in cases. So given that we're talking about in part an increase in cases already at the school level, I'm hoping the superintendent will be able to give us just a quick recap of kind of where we're at as far as recent cases. You're muted.
Sorry.
There you go.
Certainly. So we alerted families at the high school in Pine Grove of cases over this past weekend. So it was 2 student cases at the high school. One was identified Saturday. One of the close contacts of that student was further identified as an additional case on Sunday. At Pine Grove, it was a student as well. We were alerted on Sunday. So those, the total number of close contacts, it was at the high school, it was a dozen student close contacts and 3 staff close contacts. And at Pine Grove, it was 10 student and 1 staff close contact. So those are newly identified in the last, at this point, 48 hours. So again, we take a cautious approach. At the elementary level, we identify a whole classroom as a close contact, given that we are in the hybrid model with cohorts. It would be the cohort that was in school on any day where the other individual was in, that we would consider that whole class that spent the day together largely as a close contact. So that is different. That is a more cautious definition than what the DPH is using, and certainly our town contact tracers, and they obviously know our protocol and use our protocols. But our nurses have done incredible work working with Kristen Jolivet, who was hired by the 3 towns to do the tracing, along with their public health nurses and their health agents. So not sure if there's any other pertinent details beyond that. Is that what you were thinking? Would love to say more. I can't.
I know you can't. So yeah, I just wanted a quick update on that. And I wanted to note a couple other things before we go into this conversation. So I did not reach out to them, but I received an email from the president of the teachers union. I forwarded the survey that she had put out to her membership to the committee. It had a single question on it: should we stay in hybrid or go remote? And while there were a number of open responses in there, the overall feeling that they had, or a response that they had, was about a 55-45 split to staying in hybrid. So that's just, again, it's a piece of information that you have, and you have all those open responses there from them. I also wanted to note that Brian touched base today with the Departments of Public Health, and if you could give a quick update on that. You're muted again. I know.
Sorry. So I spoke with the 3 health agents, and as well as Kristen Jolivet, who I mentioned is an additional public health nurse and tracer. So my question was in regards to Thanksgiving, what is the recommendation? So there's no formal recommendation from them to say we should or shouldn't do anything. They certainly see the value in closing for 2 weeks post Thanksgiving to have that separation. But Kristen did point out, and she said, I have to say, to date, even with these most recent cases, there is no evidence of transmission within the schools, that these are outside of school cases that are certainly working into the school, right? So, I mean, these are, as I said, these 3 cases this weekend were students. So that means they're coming into the schools, but we don't yet have evidence of transmission within the school. So I think that's an important data point as you make that consideration. Now you're muted, Narissa.
Of course it's me now. I was just gonna say, we talked about this a little bit at the last meeting. I had thought that the this idea of a 2-week break or a week break or whatever it happens to be after Thanksgiving had not found favor because of the vote that was taken there. But in talking with the superintendent and the vice chair after the meeting, they both felt like additional conversation on this was, discussion on this was something that should be had, which is why it's on the agenda tonight. So we started gathering information in advance of that, and that's essentially kind of what you just heard. Some of it, again, intentional gathering of information, and some of it just that happened to come to us that was relevant to that. So I mean, this is a continuation of a discussion. I don't even know if it's the will of the committee to continue to have this discussion, but I will lay it out in front of you and open it up for comments and questions, I guess. Maureen? I'll unmute you. There you go.
I guess I would just ask Brian and Kim, maybe if they had any of their own professional recommendations at this point. I mean, I know you spoke to Kristen, Brian, but yeah, it's a huge deal, and I don't know. I guess I'm just curious to know if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, I do have a lot of thoughts. I see the value, I see the concern, I see and understand the concern with the uptick in cases. At a national level and international level, mostly at a national level here in the US. So it is a concerning trend. I go back to I get hung up with the numbers aren't yet saying that. And I really struggle making such a huge decision. And it weighs heavy, right? I mean, it's a big decision in regards to people's health and safety. But I really struggle making a decision to have such a huge shift, a change in that momentum when the data is not showing it yet. Could it show it? Absolutely. Could it show it the week after Thanksgiving? Absolutely. And does that make it a harder decision for me to have to react in the moment? Absolutely. But I really struggle with making the decision to shift and stop this momentum without having the data unfolding in front of my eyes. And again, right, someone might say, well, the data is unfolding in front of your eyes, Brian. The numbers are going up. And they are absolutely. But in the grand scheme, I think one of the biggest indicator for me is that transmission in schools. And when there's any evidence of that, any evidence at all of that, or when tracing isn't conclusive and we end up at that point where we have a big question about, is it in the schools? Then I'm not going to be hesitant to shut it down for a week or 2 weeks and convene a meeting with you all. But until that point, I'm having a really hard time because of all the ramifications, all the impacts on our highest priority learners, on those who don't learn, right, regardless of whether they're in person or not. As a high priority learner, those who struggle to learn remotely, not because of ability or disability, but just by the nature of how they learn. I struggle to be able to say to you, yes, I'm ready to recommend that.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Brian.
Kim, did you want to add? I know Maureen also addressed you, or
Yeah.
if you don't want to be in the hot seat, that's fine as well.
And actually, yeah, Kim,
We can let mine be unless you really want to, Kim, but.
No, but I would be curious to know Kim's thoughts from the perspective of shifting learning models, because that is something that is really concerning to me, that, the changing of learning models is so disruptive to students. And, we've been 3 weeks now in hybrid, and I feel like I'm seeing momentum going here, and I just can't make a decision that's gonna, disrupt that unless it absolutely has to be made. So I'm curious to know, Kim, what you think about the learning model changes and the disruption to the teachers and to the students.
I worry less about the disruption as far as the transition, because I feel like we were able to do remote well. And we're getting so much stronger in our hybrid model, and we still have things to learn and things to apply. My biggest concern, and Brian have had this conversation, is the toll that it's taking on teachers, that the emotional, and it's not just the fear that is part of it, but it's not knowing what each day, what each report is going to reveal. But that could be the life that we live from now until the end of this pandemic. So I think we have some time over Thanksgiving, in the sense where if something were to emerge that's already kind of brewing out there, that we could react. Like Brian said, we have that time. But you know, I struggle as much as he does, but I see the kids coming to school, and I know that they're safe. I said to Brian today, I have 3 grown children that are out sometimes, and I don't know exactly where they are. I feel safer at school sometimes than I do at home, because I know I have control over that atmosphere within the building and my work environment. I don't know where my young adults are every night, nor do I want to know half the time. But in any event, it's hard. It is the physical piece of it, that the fear of illness, but it's the emotional toll that it's taking. It's not having enough staff to cover for classes or for students. So that's the piece that worries me. But again, we're just at the start of this winter and holiday season. And I am fearful that if we were to go remote this quickly, the first sight of some cases, that we may not get back until March. And that scares me even more so than moving ahead safely with the hybrid model. So.
Thank you both.
Good, Maureen. Or did you have something else you wanted to add?
No, that's it for now. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Paul Mayette?
So I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think I've tried to look at it a little bit differently than we have been. And so I'm in part addressing sort of the community as well, listening, because one of the things I think that's been difficult is this idea that we're in this zero-sum game, right? That if we were to shift over, people would be upset because it was remote won or hybrid lost. And I think we're in this point where, as much as it's not good, there's going to be shifting. I think that's the only way there isn't shifting is if it's just remote all the time. There's a good chunk of me as an educator for consistency that would prefer that, but I know that's not the will of the community. I've been listening to people and I get that. At the same time, I'm looking at Thanksgiving, and I'm looking at, you know, the TSA reports from this weekend as to how many people are traveling already. I'm looking at conversations I've had. I'm looking at, you know, all sorts of different things, looking at the spike in the Canadian cases after their Thanksgiving. I can't sit here and say that there are going to be cases. Nobody can. We can't, none of us, we're all, I mean, this is all an exercise in trying to predict the future. Nor can I sit here and say there won't be. My concern, and it's sort of kind of the opposite here, is this. If we're pushing for hybrid and we're pushing to remain in hybrid and to keep that safe, I'm almost more fearful that we'll see longer shutdowns. I think the numbers will be higher after Thanksgiving, and we'll see that maybe we get that week in. And then we're looking at 2 weeks after that. Say it's December 4th, something has to shut down for 2 weeks. Shutdowns that we won't have the same control over. And, you know, if, you know, let's say it would be, sorry, this is math, 2 weeks out from December 4th, which is that Friday, would be what, the 18th. So now we're looking at coming back for 2 or 3 days or whatever that schedule would be. So I think there's another way of looking at it. I think that for people who want to see kids in school as much as possible, and for people who are concerned about the health concerns coming back, with people coming back from Thanksgiving, and I understand those concerns. I could see shutting down. I wouldn't say 2 weeks. I would be more inclined to 1. And I think that one of the things we have to think about here is what is the trade-off? And ultimately for most students, we're talking about 2 days of in-class instruction, with the hand back being that it's 5 full days of synchronous. Now, I am not in any way, shape, or form minimizing the importance of 2 days. I have fought for 5 extra minutes when I felt like my instruction was being impacted by that. Which is probably a good point to admit that I'm not always an easy person to have on staff. But I do feel that that is, for what might be gained in the end, both in health and in extra time, it's a reasonable sacrifice to consider. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying it's ideal. But I am saying that I feel it ought to at least be considered. And I think beforehand, I do want to say that I want to acknowledge that what's already been acknowledged, that the one of the great strains on that will be on the teaching staff. And you know, if anything like this is considered by the committee, I would hope that people would be very, very patient with them. It's just my thoughts.
Paul. Paul Goldner, you were next, but did you put your hand down intentionally, or? Yes, intentionally. All right, Linda.
I struggle with going remote when the numbers don't show it. I understand that this is a hard decision for all of us. We want what's best for the students. We want what's best for families. But if we close for Thanksgiving, then people are going to want to close for Christmas, for New Year's. And I don't see us getting back, like Kim said, until March. And I think the safest place for these kids is in school. I think it's split at our union, it's split within our committee, it's split within our communities. So it's a hard decision to come up with, other than I have to go with the numbers. I would say that we stay hybrid because the numbers just don't push us to go to remote. And I think those are just decisions that have to be made when the numbers go higher than they are. We hear about cases in schools throughout all of Massachusetts. And we have some of the best contact tracing, I believe, in the state with how many people we have. And I think they're recognizing the cases and immediately jumping on the close contacts and notifying people. So I think we have to go with they're as safe as they can be in school. And we just have to reiterate to our community that you have to wear masks. You have to make sure that you're following what everything needs to be done to keep these schools open. So my vote would be for us to stay hybrid.
Okay.
Thanks, Narissa.
Caitlin. Oh, sorry, Caitlin. I just muted you. Did not mean to.
You unmuted me too. Thank you. I was looking.
You know.
So I see the benefit of what Paul Mayette was saying of, 7 days or 1 week to get more time later. My concern is more along the line of there's no clear path to come back after that 7 days. If we could strictly say it would only be 7 days and no matter what, we would reopen, I would be more willing. But, you take those 7 days, numbers will go up. I don't see them trending down anytime soon. So it just becomes this like repetitive, well, not quite yet, not quite yet. And then we kind of wake up one day and it's a little warmer out and we're still remote. And it makes me very nervous to start that now as a preemptive strike rather than when the numbers kind of say, you need to do this. And because of that, I would say tonight, with the numbers we have, with the information I have right now at just past 9 p.m., I would say hybrid, and to stay that way until there's a big enough shift.
Good.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Caitlin. Paul Goldner, you are up next.
Traditionally, green means go, yellow means caution, and red means stop. By that metric, the governor's first color coding, I never liked the map as a tool, but that map was to some extent reality. If we were using the same color coding metrics now, the whole state's red. As it is, we shifted color codings, and we more than doubled communities that went into red this last week. We blew by the numbers that we originally said were going to trigger remote, and we said we were going to look at this over 3 weeks of time, which, given the size of our communities, I think makes some sense. But then, using the governor's revised metrics, we kind of hit those numbers too, for where we have a lot of cases in the community. I know we don't have evidence of in-school transmission, but the large-scale contact tracing studies show that children are sources of community transmission, and that community transmission is kind of what's happening in the schools. And our numbers between what we have in the schools and what we have in the community are matching up. Our schools are matching community transmission. And if children are sources of community transmission, then we're just going to keep going up with the communities going up. I think if we're saying, what are the numbers in front of us? The numbers in front of us are already not good. And nobody who's looking at this from a statistical perspective is thinking that Thanksgiving is not going to be bad. So I do think that a week of remote after Thanksgiving is possible to contain where we're at now and not go up so much due to what, you know, my brother's school district, the health officials in his communities have identified that their cases are now coming from 1 or 2 extra people in the household. Like, anything outside of the household is now spreading in their communities. And what I hear from people in town, what I hear from my students, is that people are planning smaller Thanksgivings, but not no gatherings. So I think that we're going to have more growth, another small inflection. And every time we have one of these small inflections in the middle of exponential growth, it's huge numbers that are coming. And if we cannot have that inflection, if we can even flatten a little bit by staying remote for a week, we maybe can buy until Christmas break. And then, you know, that's 2.5 weeks of being in a hybrid model that maybe we lose. Last week, I was sort of saying for a week, and I'm still in that spot.
All right. Thank you. Anyone? Aaron? Oh, sorry, you are muted. Hang on.
So every time we have these conversations, I keep going back to the high needs kids that we have. And at what point does the skill tip that we do actually have to go full remote and those students lose everything that they have? The services, the in-person care and attention that they're getting to be able to get their lessons, that's the part that really drags on me when we go through in these discussions to make these decisions. Because we still have the opportunity of potentially going remote for next week, but allowing the high risk kids to come to school for the week. Or we have an option, we have different ways to be able to go about and think about this, to be able to make sure that our high risk community does still get what they need by mitigating some of the extra impact that we would have by having the full opportunity for the hybrid program that we have going. So I would actually be interested in hearing a few more people talk about making sure that we still continue to provide to our high needs, our high risk students, what they need to be able to thrive, to survive.
Is that a question or a comment?
Well, it's a little bit of both. I mean, I want to throw the idea out there to everybody that it's not just a decision of, hybrid versus remote. It's also a decision of making sure that we still give the high needs, the high risk community, the services that they need.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I would just jump in and say, I understand that from a needs perspective, thoroughly and completely understand that. If the decision's being made as I keep hearing the term preemptive strike, right? So it's about breaking, then even bringing 300 students, 200, I forget the exact number, 275 students into the building, I would say you'd have to mirror that concern. So I don't know how to rectify that it's okay to, we want to shift back to remote, but still bring high priority students. That made sense when we were talking about the numbers we were talking about, but if we're making this choice based on the numbers in a preemptive way, I don't know how we do that other than saying, okay, it's just the staff in the building working independently in their own classrooms. That's a very different thing than having students in. So I guess I don't know how to rectify that or reconcile that, I should say.
I'll just second Erin's concern is my biggest concern. It's the high risk kids. My hope would be that if we did decide to take a couple of weeks, this is the reason why I would see, in part, I mean, there's also staffing. And I have concerns about testing now and testing after Thanksgiving, because there are long lines at a number of our testing sites locally. And I have heard things all over the board about how long it's taking to turn around tests, including people who are going in and getting tested at the same time and having their results come back days apart. So I'm worried about that system getting stressed, and there will be, I believe, additional stress on it after Thanksgiving, as well as people have had a gathering and then or they've traveled and then they come back and they get tested again. But one of my biggest concerns is high risk students. I think there is some value in still going out for 2 weeks if the high risk students are. Actually, no, in my mind, you lose that trade-off if you take those high-risk students out. I think if you're truly going out because there are cases in the building or transmission in the building to the point that you can't have anyone there, then that's when high-risk students should go out. If we could go out now and say we're removing everyone else from the building to insulate those high-risk students and the staff, to make sure that they can keep going because they need to be our highest priority. So my thinking, that's the case that's made for staying out for 2 weeks after Thanksgiving is insulating those people and trying to keep those high risk students in as much as possible, because there are students that absolutely struggle at home. There are tiers, right? They have a hard time staying on track. There are students that cannot learn at home. And those are those high risk students. And maybe, I mean, I've definitely heard, in some of the emails that we've received kind of questions about the scope of the high risk students and if more could come in. But I think even the ones that are in there right now, I'd be hesitant to say to to the autism spectrum disorder program, for instance, kids, hey, this is it. We're taking, 2 weeks and you need to go out as well. My hope would be that we were saying to them instead, you're staying in and we're insulating you. We're putting less students and we're putting less traffic in the building. There'll be, less individuals here, and that's going to insulate you so that you can hopefully stay in longer, because I think those are the students that we really, really have to worry about, because they cannot do remote. It's hard for others. They can't, in many cases, cannot do remote. Maureen?
I would just add that I'm really worried about the students that we haven't captured, that the students that are in remote or have, during our remote period, that we're losing because they're not classified as high needs. I mean, there are so many students that are struggling at home. So I'm just concerned about sort of the unidentified student. I feel like we're going to be creating more high needs students. I just, I sort of agree with Linda, that the numbers, I feel like we have been able to see through the contact tracing that we have, that the numbers of cases didn't, create any large spread in our school. So I would support staying in hybrid, just because I feel like these kids need a little more time in school. If we are going to have to shut down at some point, I'm afraid that if we do it too soon, we won't get back until after the holidays. And at that point, I'm fearful for what it's going to do to many students.
Linda? Oh, let me unmute you. There you go.
Yeah, I don't agree with just the high need kids, because like Maureen said, I think there's a lot of kids that don't do well at home, that they don't do well remotely. We've heard it from so many parents. I've talked to many parents, and their kids struggle just like the high needs kids. So until there's more numbers in the school, I think we need to keep these kids in school as much as possible. I agree that the academic gap is just going to keep widening the more we make these kids stay home. All the kids should be assessed the same way the high risk ones are, because the risk is still there for the high risk kids being in school, just as much as all the other kids being there as well. We can't rule out that the high risk kids could be affected as well. But we have to have faith that our contact tracers and the school has all the precautions put in place. Thanks, Marissa.
Thanks. I have to say, I don't doubt contact tracers and I don't doubt the precautions. My biggest concern is that we're going to have so many cases, even if they're not, a school transmission case, that we're going to lose all our staff. And the school literally isn't going to be able to function, because I think that's, you add, we've seen what, 3 or 4 cases can do. If you have that tick up to 10 or 12 cases over the next couple of weeks, that's my concern there. It's not necessarily in school transmission. It's not precautions. It is losing our staffing. Kaylee.
Completely agree that we need to give the higher need students the best access to an education we can, and I believe that we need to give all of the students as best of an education as possible. But at the same time, what's keeping the high needs kids from seeing just as many people over the holidays as the kids who haven't been marked as high needs? If we do it so that just the high needs kids are coming in, we're still exposing the teachers that work with those high need students to the same potential risk as if we had the other teachers in with the non-high risk students. So that just concerns me a little bit that we're doing that as well.
Any other comments on this? So we don't have to take an action tonight if someone wants to make a motion in a particular direction. Although, I mean, it doesn't really make sense to make a motion to stay in hybrid, but if someone wanted to make a motion to go the other way, to go to remote, you're welcome to do that. If we want to just hold where we are, I mean, I can say I am very mixed about this. I can say Brian and I are usually on the same page, headed in the same direction. And this has been a very uncomfortable couple of weeks because we're hashing it out in ways that we never have before. And it's hard because we're usually saying, how do we move forward? And we're not at that point right now. We're still trying to figure out, which direction was the right direction to go in, because we're headed in different directions. My thing is to, again, preserve and protect those high-risk kids staying in school for as long as we can, and protect school overall to some degree with making sure that we don't end up with a staffing issue in very short order that causes the schools to close anyway. And I'm also concerned about identifying the cases, because if we don't have testing, that was the problem at the beginning of the year, right? I try not to get infuriated by emails, but the ones that say you just step by and let this happen, like the month that I spent on the phone with legislators who are going to Mass DPH, who are fighting to get testing in this area. And that is the one point I think that frustrates me, is that this isn't passive. This isn't making a decision and then nothing happens. Like we just all walk away from it. That doesn't happen here. And I find that to be extremely frustrating that that's the perception. But setting that aside, I am not personally going to make a motion here. I don't feel that strongly in either direction, especially if taking 2 weeks would put the high risk students out. That's the primary benefit I see in my mind. So, but I'll leave it up to any other member of the committee who may want to take an action here. All right, so seeing none, we have a business meeting on December 9th as our next meeting. I don't see a need, I don't think, thinking through everything that we've seen tonight, to meet in between. I think all the actions we have can be carried out outside of business meetings until then, unless anyone has any concerns. All right, seeing none, can I get a motion to adjourn? Sorry, I have to unmute everybody, hang on. Paul's already unmuted. Mute, did I miss anybody?
I'll make a motion, and everybody have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Linda. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All right, any discussion? I need a roll call vote, please. Where's my list? Hang on. Erin?
Yes.
Thank you. Paul Goldner?
Yes.
Maureen? Oh, Maureen remuted, man.
Yes.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Paulise?
Yes.
Linda?
Yes.
Paul Mayette?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. Thank you, everybody. I would just urge everyone to be safe, because I believe what goes on in this district depends on you. And I hope you all take precautions. Thank you and have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.